Hello everybody, my name is Lucy and welcome to Books and Brushes. So today, yes, my hair has just been washed and it's still wet. I didn't do a video last week, sorry about that. I went on holiday and before I went on holiday I did 8 solid days of working. So yeah, really didn't get time to film, let alone edit. Sorry about missing last week and thank you to the people who said you missed me and we're looking forward to it. Sorry I missed it. But this week we're getting back on track. So let's get into this video before it becomes a mile long. I am doing my May wrap up. Yes, it's halfway through June, we don't even care. If you haven't watched my May/Asian Readathon TBR, that's going to be extremely useful in explaining why I picked these books and what these books are about. Most of you will probably have seen that one already, and if you haven't, I recommend watching that first because I'm not going to bother doing synopses in this video, except for the ones that I didn't talk about in the May TBR. So let's just get straight on into the mini reviews, and we are starting with Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Aisha Saeed. The next book I read was The Young Elites by Mary Lou. Now this one I've got less to say on, so we'll be quick with this one. It was fine, it was okay. It was a little boring, it was a little generic. I found it quite plain. I feel that sounds mean, but that's the truth. It was a little bit of a slug to get through. This one has got a very generic storyline, world in which people have powers and they are marked and they are called malfettos and they are downtrodden amongst society, and a lot of them have powers on the side, and there's a group of young people who are fighting to live in this world peacefully and not be trodden upon. You can probably think of a million stories that have that same base. So what was different about this one? Not a whole lot. Again, we'll talk about the positives. I really thought the main character was very interesting. I think her backstory was very dark, very creepy. There was a lot of parental father abuse. It was creepy and gross and quite dark, and I really enjoyed that. It gave this book some spice that it was desperately needing. That I found very interesting, and I thought the main character's power was a power you don't often see. She can manipulate shadows and illusions, and it was really cool. I thought that was a really cool power, and I liked that the main character was quite dark. She was very morally conflicted and she was almost like an anti-hero. Not an anti-hero, but like not the villain. She's trying to be good, but also she does a lot of bad things, but she wants to be good, so she's like wrestling with this darkness, and it was very interesting. The moral conflict of the main character, I really like that angle that we don't have the Mary Sue main character. We almost have this character you don't know if she's going to be good or bad. She's trying and she's in both worlds, and I just thought that was a very interesting main character to have. So this book did have potential. With the main character was very solid and very developed, but the plot and the other characters then fall completely flat. The other characters were very generic and underdeveloped for me. So we have broody leader, pretty nice boy, and the anti one who doesn't want her in the group, and some others, and they all just felt very bland. They didn't have personalities. It felt like the main character was so fleshed out and quite interesting, and she was playing with a bunch of Barbie dolls and action figures. The rest of the characters just didn't really have any personality, and that was a bit weird. And the plot, again, we have this really interesting power with the illusions, we have this really creepy dark backstory for the main character, then the plot doesn't really do much. There's this whole secret spy thing for the wrong side, and should I tell them they're gonna kill me? There is an interesting, I suppose, dilemma with that, but the plot doesn't really go anywhere, and I just found it quite boring and a bit dull, which is annoying because, like I said, this character had so much potential, this backstory, this angle on taking a story where the hero main character isn't really a hero and she does a lot of bad shit, and that whole moral conflict was really interesting, but the rest of the book just didn't do anything with it. So I just feel like this book was a little bit of a missed opportunity. I don't know whether I'll get to the other books or if I'll get to them at any point soon. I have no real desire to keep reading them, to be honest. It's just a bit dull. It's annoying because when you have such an interesting base and then you don't use it, it's quite annoying and frustrating because it could have been a really good book, but it's just missing something. It's missing a lot of pieces that would make it interesting and that would turn this very average story into a spectacular one. I don't know if this is just because it's a very old dystopian and it's trying to trend chase with when dystopian was everything and now everyone hates it. I don't know if that's why this book was a little bit bland, because it's trying to fly that line. Either way, it wasn't my favourite. Next up, I listened to on audiobook I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shreya. This one was brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to this. My biggest issue with it was far too short. It was like half an hour or an hour or something ridiculous. And I put it on listening to it thinking, oh, this will last me a good few days on my commute. No, it didn't last me one. It ended so quickly and I could have listened to this for hours and hours. It could have been expanded upon. It was very, I don't want to say surface level, but there were so many more depths this book could have gone into that I wish it had. That's my biggest negative, but actually I really enjoyed it. I just wanted it to keep going. So we have the perspective of an Indian trans woman, which was a perspective that I don't think I've ever seen, and it was such an interesting read, and it was very personal, very vulnerable, very raw. It felt very, I don't want to say unedited, but it felt very unpolished. It was like an essay, memoir, train of thought type written work. It definitely could have some more depth, more delving, if it wants to be a proper memoir or essay on the theme of masculinity and femininity and gender roles and all of that is what it's talking about. But I just thoroughly enjoyed how personal it was, and it felt very flawed, but that's because people are flawed, and I appreciated that about the book. I loved the discussion on toxic masculinity and male power and privilege, gender and gender expression, femininity and masculinity, and all of those topics, and how they were talked about in such a personal perspective from one person and their journey and their life. So interesting to me. I feel like in some way we can all relate to parts of it, because everyone can relate to parts of it. You may not be trans, you may not be a woman, but we can all relate to gender expression controlling our life, gender expectation and the roles they play in society. I'm very passionate about this topic and this discussion, and it was very good and very interesting. Vivek was like a friend talking to me, writing this essay on this theme, and I really enjoyed it. I really hope that she comes out with another more involved, deeper, maybe more research from other people as well. It was great to have this raw, short, unpolished work, but I would have loved more, but I'm not complaining because it was really great to listen to, and honestly I just want to listen to it all over again. I recommend listening to it because it is so ridiculously short. You'll be through with it in a flash, and it's a perspective that I think is very interesting, and a lot of the topics are very important in this world today. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. I know there are issues with it, like not perfect, but I kind of almost respect it for that, because it's not trying to be this is exact perfection and how we should all live and think. It's just one person kind of spitballing their ideas and their thoughts about this very personal subject. I enjoyed that about it, and I probably will go back and listen to this maybe in June, because it was just a great read. Now the next book I read was This Time Will Be Different by Misa Seguria. Oh my god, it's been a while, so I don't remember how the pronunciation was, my bad. But I listened to this as an audiobook, and this, if you'll notice, was not on my main TBR. This was because all of the other books on my TBR, the only ones left were physical books, and I needed another audiobook to listen to on my commute. So I picked just another Asian book, and this was the one that piqued my interest, and I read it, and it was really great. So this book is about a girl whose family owns a flower shop, and they've owned it for generations. It was like her grandfather's. He ended up losing it to the internment and everything that was going on with that, and he had to sell it for peanuts, basically, this rich white man at the time, and then he had to fight and suffer to buy it back when the internment ended. This is set in America with Asian antagonists, if that wasn't clear by the internment. So the family has this flower shop that they have fought long and hard for, and it's been in their family for a long time, and it's upon hard times. But our main character has found a real passion for flower arranging and knowing all the meanings behind the flowers and the artistry of arranging pieces and flower decoration, and it's become something that she's really enjoying. Her auntie is the one who runs the flower shop, very airy-fairy, all about romance and love, someday my prince will come kind of person. And her mother is the complete opposite. Her mother is a very ambitious, cutthroat career woman who's all about success and who works for this big company. So her aunt and her mum could not be more different, and the main character feels very under pressure by her mother, because her mother is so ambitious and she has such plans and aspirations for her daughter that our main character just doesn't feel she's ever going to be able to live up to. And it's that Asian struggle, the model minority, and she just feels extremely disappointed in herself that her mum's not proud of her and that she's failed at everything she's ever done and tried. And when the shop falls on hard times, this is the thing that she feels like she needs to fight for, not only her passion for the flower arranging, but also the history of her family and the racism, and trying to fight the injustice that is still carried through from that history in her family's past, and carrying through and making a difference in her life today, and trying to fight against the racism of the past and change it for the future. And these are the things she's passionate about, and she's finally becoming ambitious, resourceful, even if it goes against things her mother wants her to be. And so she's finally getting to be what her mother wants to be, but not in the way her mother wants her to be it. And there's also a lot of romance and friend drama and gayness, and it's just all a very beautiful book. I really enjoyed the story thoroughly. Like, such a great listen. I had so much fun with this book. I loved that the main character worked in this flower shop and she had this passion for this, but she wasn't very lovey-dovey. She wasn't the romantic type, or at least she didn't think she was, which is kind of something that I can relate to. I wouldn't call myself a romantic, but who doesn't love a little bit of romance? Love is nice. There was also the fighting for what she believed in and all the talks about racism and the history of her family and her feeling this pressure and this disappointment and this expectation upon her to be the child of this ambitious Korean woman and also an Asian. I loved all the discussions that were so naturally brought up in this book. I loved the way the main characters all felt like such real people, and there was a lot of talks about white saviors, old racist. There was also her best friend was gay, and there was her meddling in this relationship, her trying to protect her friend but simultaneously overpower and not listen and let her friend live her life, and because she had this grudge against the girl her friend was crushing on because of what she's done in the past, and her trying to white savior her way through this movement that these kids are trying to create about the school's name, which should be named after the Japanese man who owned the land and not the white man who stole it. Anyway, I'm probably not even making sense anymore. I'm just saying bits and pieces of this book, but I just found this book incredibly interesting, so many different ways. All of the characters were really developed, felt like real people. The plot was interesting. It just had me. It had my heart. It was a great story. I loved the development and the characters and everything this book was trying to say, and it managed to fit so much into this book and so naturally too. So Misa, you know how to write. I loved this book. I loved the writing style, how it was all woven together, how we had the history, and I just feel like I'm babbling now, but I really thoroughly enjoyed that book. I haven't actually written a review up for this one yet, which is probably why my thoughts are a bit more all over the place than maybe some of my other reviews have been. When I write out a written review, I tend to then also be able to speak and articulate it better. So maybe that's why this review is a bit all over the place, because I haven't yet written a review for this one, but I will do that soon. And if you are following me on Goodreads, you'll see that appear, and all the reviews from the other books I've talked about today as well. So if you're not, maybe you should go and check out some of my reviews, because they are far more eloquent than I'm being right now. And lastly, I read Harley in the Sky by Akemi Dawn Bowman. I've been meaning to read another Akemi Dawn Bowman book since I read Starfish back in like 2017, like 4 years ago now. Yikes. And I absolutely love this book. I haven't read Summerbird Blue yet, but I'll get to that. Harley in the Sky was absolutely fantastic. It was just fun. Akemi Dawn Bowman writes these books that are just so fun, so good to read, and I could go back and reread it again right now, even though I just read it. So Harley's ambitions are about becoming a trapeze artist, and she loves the circus. Circus is her life, and her greatest ambition is to be up on that main stage, being the trapeze artist she knows she can be. And there is betrayal and circus antics, loneliness, and there's trying to fit in. There's people not rooting for you to succeed. There's running away. There's familial relationships and ambition and knowing where you fit and belong in this world. And I just loved themes of this story that were just so well done, and I loved our main character. I love her emotional dilemma of what she was doing and her conflict the whole time she was doing it. Essentially, she'd done a bad thing to get what she wanted, and she knew it was bad and she felt guilty about it the entire time, but she had this ambition and this dream that she was desperate to achieve, and she was determined to get there and to work hard for it and to be what she'd always wanted to be, to prove it was what she was meant to do and what she was meant to be. And I just loved that theme and that ambition, but also that guilt, and it was just such an interesting moral dilemma and conflict for our main character. There was a lot of loneliness. When you run away, the environment like the circus, there's a lot of out for yourself thinking, and she was trying to toe that line of being a good person but also getting what she wants, standing up for herself. It was a great book. I would say that the mental health issues, because in Starfish the mental health stuff was just the light of my life, I would say it was less needed here. I really like it when Akemi Dawn Bowman talks about things like depression, because she knows what the fuck she's talking about. So that wasn't the issue, but I did feel like the mental health issues were a little bit, and I don't want to say shoehorned in, because that would be a bit over exaggerative of how it felt, but they felt a little bit like they didn't need to be there, or they were not quite as natural or as woven in as I'd have liked them to be. The main character just starts talking about her mental health sometimes really out of the blue, and they keep mentioning this event in the past that alludes to what happened. It never actually really says for sure, but I'm pretty sure they mean cutting or a suicide attempt, something along the lines of that. I thought it was interesting how people were treating her differently after that. It's an event she can never quite live down because people are worried about her and her mental health, which I found that interesting, but there was a lot of parts where I just felt the mental health didn't quite sit in the right place in the story. It needed to be woven in a bit more or just not be as delved into. It felt a little bit random. That's my only criticism, and it's very minor. It's not a big issue at all, and like I said, Akemi Dawn Bowman can write mental health issues, so that is not a problem. It's just the method, the way it was woven in could have been a bit more subtle and a bit more natural. But I really love this story. It was very atmospheric, but being set in a circus, it had such a vibe to it. I love the characters and main character's journey. Akemi Dawn Bowman's really good at writing personal stories from one perspective about this one person's journey and thoughts and feelings. She's so good at that. Deep emotional conflict for a main character, and I absolutely loved it. Akemi Dawn Bowman is one of those authors that I just love to read because the books are fun, they have great themes, great topics, but they're just fun to read. I thoroughly enjoyed this one, and now I need to get to Summerbird Blue. And that is all the books I read in May. I did start when I was 10, but that was because when I finished I'm Afraid of Men on the bus, I needed something to read. I went to my Kindle book, so I kind of started this and then haven't picked it up since. So that might have been abandoned, I'm not quite sure. And as you'll notice, there are a few books from my TBR that I didn't quite get to. There is one book out of the 5 that I didn't get to, which is close. I think that's pretty close. The only book out of the 5 that I said I would read was Darius the Great's Not Okay. That's the only one I didn't get to. So that's not bad. 4 out of 5. Plus I read This Time Will Be Different, so I definitely read 5 books. It just wasn't the 5 I'd anticipated, and I didn't quite complete the A Different Country in Asia challenge because I didn't manage to read the Persian book. Close enough. I feel really proud of the books I did read, and I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of great books. There was a few ranty moments, some criticism on all of the books really. I managed to find things to improve on all of them, but on the whole it was a pretty good reading month, and I'm very pleased with how much I got done. So thank you for watching this video. I don't know how long it's going to be. I know some books I talked about forever and some books I didn't have as much to say, but that's just the nature of the beast, and honestly I'm cool with it. I don't have the time to stress or worry about it anymore. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like it if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're not. I'm still on 214 subscribers, which I've been on for a while, and it'd be nice to see that number tick up maybe a little bit. And as always, chat to me in the comment section about any of these books. Have you read any of them? Do you love any of them? Do you hate any of them? Do any of them sound interesting to you? Which one is your favourite? Which one do you most want to pick up? Literally anything in the comments down below about these books, and we'll be going all day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.